What's up, you guys? Sean Ross Sapp here alongside my co-host Raj Giri for the official Wrestling Inc. podcast on a pretty damn historic night, Raj. Holly Holm defeated Ronda Rousey, and it wasn't even close. UFC 193, Holly Holm victorious via knockout. Raj, what was your reaction to this?
Man, it was insane. I mean, it was one of those things that I think anyone watching, any fan watching at home could see the mistakes that Rousey was making, but still, you're still shocked when the finish actually comes, even though you see Holm easily winning the fight by that point, and yeah, it was just, I mean, it was stunning. I mean, I don't know what else you could call it other than stunning.
I said in my UFC 193 preview that as long as I've been watching Holly Holm fight in MMA, it looked like every single fight was just her working towards building a blueprint to beat Ronda Rousey. I didn't think she was going to do it, though. I didn't in any way think that she was going to do it. Certainly thought she was capable because you really can't understate good footwork in MMA, and it's something I guess some people can't comprehend, but Holly Holm's footwork is better than most men's. It comes from 16 years of her training with Jackson and Winklejohn, and obviously Greg Jackson is a master game planner. She is a world champion boxer, and you don't get to be a world champion boxer without fantastic footwork. And she presented something that Ronda Rousey has never seen before, somebody who was willing to get in and get out. I was talking to somebody on a podcast last year, and I likened it to a demolition derby. When you think demolition derby, you think a guy just runs a car right into somebody else. But the smart guys tap another car and then run away. Tap another car and run away. They bide their time. That's what Holly Holm did. I mean, at what point in the fight did you think that her winning was a real probability or a real possibility?
Probably like the first 30 seconds. Once she really started tagging Ronda, and Ronda was like really rushing in and was not like altering her game plan. It was like just rush in and try to rush in and defeat her like she has everyone else, and not like shifting the game plan. And that I was like, oh man, she could be in trouble. And the same thing happened in the fight before with Joanna. I thought, like she's in trouble, like she's facing a tough opponent. I mean, these were both 20-1 odds, odd fights. And I remember I watched, this was the first pay-per-view, UFC pay-per-view my wife has watched since the Anderson Silva and Nate Diaz fight. And I remember saying these are 20-1, but that's just insane. There's no way that it should be. And in both cases, but I thought Rousey and Holm, I thought it was going to be a tougher fight, but I still thought that Rousey, once she took Holm to the ground, that it would be over.
Yeah, she escaped an armbar. Well, she avoided an armbar, rather.
And again, even the armbar, Rousey was rushing it. She wasn't. It wasn't like she took her time to find it. She was like, as soon as she got on the ground, she's like, she had to have it or she was lost, and she got lost. And yeah, I mean, it was stunning. I mean, I jumped out of my seat. I was close to skip. I mean, when you had mentioned us doing a podcast tonight, and I had other plans, and I was like, I don't know if I should change the other plans to watch this tonight. And then, I changed my plans finally to watch it. But, this was one of those that I was like, I thought, it was so clear who was going to win. I bought it. I was just going to record it, watch it when I got home, and then talk about it tomorrow. But man, I'm so glad I didn't, because that was history. It was in a lot of ways I think it was a more stunning upset than GSP and Matt Serra, because Matt Serra was more like GSP got caught. This was Holm dominated Rousey and then finished her off in the second.
And GSP had been beaten before as well. We've never seen Ronda Rousey really in any measure of trouble before. Miesha Tate took her to the third or fourth round, but never had her in trouble.
Yeah.
It's really weird. I've coached women's kickboxing in particular for over 4 years now, and there was just a host of things that Ronda Rousey was doing that I try to break habits from these girls on day one. Like she chin up, hands down, crossing your feet when you strike. You never do that. That's a fantastic way to end up on your ass, and that's exactly what happened to Ronda Rousey. And for somebody with an Olympic judo background, she has to know how important footwork is. And here's something that I wonder. Does this lend any credibility to the things that Ronda Rousey's mother said about her coach?
Do you go off one bad performance for, all the other victories and everything that she's had?
But I mean, primarily, he's her striking coach. And how bad did she look? And think about this.
Yeah, but
think about this. Where are Marina Shafir, Shayna Baszler, and Jessamine Duke now? They're long gone. They got out of there. How has Jake Ellenberger done since going to that camp? How has Travis Brown done since going to that camp? I mean, and Ronda Rousey, with the exception of the Betch Correa fight and, arguably the Sarah McMahon fight, she won those fights with judo that she probably didn't really pick up much from Edmund. So, I mean, to me that, and she had a lot going on. Ronda Rousey had a ton going on. I've wrote about it plenty. Her boyfriend, Travis Brown, all his controversy and him outing their relationship, which I'm sure she didn't seem thrilled about. The issues with her mother and her coach. Her coach just filed bankruptcy and is getting a lot of attention for doing that, claiming he has no income. Her intense schedule, and of course her own accusations in the media about domestic abuse. It can't be easy to be Ronda Rousey.
Yeah, the domestic abuse thing, that's a little, I thought that was a little, I don't know.
Oh, I agree. I think it was a little ridiculous, to be honest with you.
Yeah. If someone's trying to hold you back or something, and it's different with men and women, call it a double standard, whatever. If a woman is holding a guy back, no, the guy can't do anything. You know what I mean? And
I agree.
That's just how it should be.
I agree.
But if a guy is holding a woman back and she knocks you out, yeah, that's how it is.
For the record, for those of you who don't know what I'm talking about, in Ronda Rousey's book, she wrote that she got physical with a boyfriend who she caught taking nude pictures of her, I think while she slept. And when she tried to leave, he blocked her way, and it is absolutely legal for her to defend herself and move somebody out of the way. I had somebody actually tweet me and say, yes, this is 100% true. I've seen people charged with kidnapping for blocking a door before. And also, he persisted and followed her to her car, and she had to drag him out again. And, I mean, when you're Ronda Rousey, you're a polarizing figure, you're going to get that type of attention anyway, no matter what. I think she was in the right in that situation. But, yeah. I mean, Holly Holm had this entire crowd on her side by the end of the fight. Isn't that amazing?
But
maybe it's because the history was made.
Yeah, and I think, when you have someone so dominant and you witness history happening, you kind of jump on that side. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, and plus, I think Rousey kind of set the tone when she wouldn't slap gloves at the beginning of the fight.
My real question, Raj, imagine what Stephanie McMahon would have done to Rousey.
Oh, jeez. I mean, you saw what she did to Brie Bella. I mean, has Stephanie McMahon ever lost other than to Vince? I can't remember the last time.
Well, she was women's champion, didn't she? She had to lose that at some point. I'll look it up. I'm going to look it up.
McMahons usually don't lose. They usually, the title gets vacated.
Yeah. Or Shane McMahon. Yeah. Shane McMahon retired the European belt, didn't he?
Yeah, Vince retired the ECW champ and passed that along. So
Stephanie has lost to Mr. McMahon, A-Train, Sable, The Rock.
A-Train?
Yeah, it says A-Train on August 12th, 2013.
Wow.
I mean, that's got him a job for life, apparently. So.
I guess so. I don't remember that one.
As long as he doesn't juice up at any powerlifting competitions, he should be good.
Right. Yeah.
So
that's a career killer.
But yeah, Holly Holm just obliterated Ronda Rousey with that head kick, and I've seen her do it before. She fought for 4 rounds with a broken arm. I think it was in Legacy FC, and then knocked a girl out with a head kick. And I know you've seen it even on our comment boards. How many people say Ronda Rousey fights tomato cans? Ronda Rousey fights tomato cans. That isn't the case, guys. She's beaten the top 7 of the top 10 in her division, and I'm not going to pretend like this is a really advanced division. It's not. It's a really young sport and a young division, and that has plenty of holes in it, but she has fought the best of the best.
This is one of those cases where I think if they were to fight again and Rousey, I think this fight happened 10 times. I think Holm would have won the majority of the time, just because the mistakes would have been the same. But I think now, with Rousey seeing the mistakes that she made, I would put her as a huge favorite in the rematch. I think her not the holes necessarily, but her mistakes were glaring.
Yeah.
And not when you fight, that doesn't mean you're the best in everything. It's how you react to someone's strengths. And so Rousey doesn't have to be a better striker than Holm. She needs to know how to neutralize it, and she can. And she just wasn't able to with her rushing and her believing her hype. And I think just that she became that whole Mike Tyson thing and just believing that she was unbeatable. At some point, she was just like, okay, I need to just go finish this. I do this every time. Okay, fine. I'm just going to run in and finish this. And it didn't work.
I wonder if almost a weight is off of her shoulders because of this. There has to be a great amount of pressure.
And I think she is so competitive that I think that any talk of retirement that she had has gone out the window. I think.
Yeah. I spoke very briefly to John Jones one time about the loss to Matt Hamill, and he told me he thought it was one of the better things that ever happened to him because the pressure of being undefeated, even on a technicality, was no longer there. He didn't have to deal with that.
Right, but that's so different at the same time.
Oh, absolutely.
Killing. I mean, he dominated every second of that fight.
Yeah, he did, and that should have been a win. It should have been a win.
Right, it should have been a win. This one, she lost pretty much every minute. I mean, there were times when she was charging, she was dominating. She had octagon control, and Are
you trying to tell me you don't want to see Matt Hamill versus John Jones 2 at UFC 200?
I can't. How has that not happened yet? We've been robbed as fans.
I know.
But I'll say this. I think, there's so many people I see on the comment section saying UFC is crapping their pants and Dana White's pissed.
No.
Man, no. If Cyborg wasn't going to happen, and that was iffy at best, this is, in many ways, the best thing. It opens up so many more doors. I think now you could go with Rousey and Davis. Yep. And you could go with Tate. Now she's back in the title picture. You go with her and Holly Holm.
But why would they go with Rousey and Davis? I mean, Rousey just destroyed Alexis Davis.
I mean, not Davis. Who was it that is coming off the wins? Who's like up there?
Juliana Pena?
No, but they could go with Pena. Was it Davis?
She killed Davis. There's
who am I thinking of?
Davis, Zingano, Nunez.
Who just beat Kat Zingano?
I don't think Kat Zingano has fought since the Rousey fight.
You're right. Amanda Nunez.
That would be interesting. Yeah, and I mean the game plan has been there is a game plan to beat Ronda Rousey now, and she has to view that. She has to see that. Another thing, and like I said, I mean, Ronda Rousey's next fight, everybody loves a comeback story, and people will watch. The rematch with Holm, people will watch. Here's the thing. How much money did Chris Cyborg just lose out on?
Well, I don't know. That fight's still huge.
Yeah, But I mean, not right now it's not. Now the big fight is Rousey versus Holm again.
Yeah, but Cyborg wasn't there anyway. She still has to fight at 135. So until she does that, it's not even in the question. So I don't know. I don't know how much anything has really changed on that front.
I've heard a lot of people saying, "Oh, imagine what Cyborg would have done to her." Well, Cyborg and Holly Holm are different kinds of strikers, and I think it's really weird to compare the two. That's like comparing Ronda Rousey with a judo background to somebody with a Brazilian jiu-jitsu background. Cyborg does not fight in the way that Holly Holm does. She does not bide her time. She does not She does not strike at range very well. She gets inside, and that's generally where Ronda Rousey wants the fight to be. Ronda Rousey has shown she can eat a few punches and weather a storm long enough to get a throw, but I mean she was knocked out cold tonight. Traditionally, Cyborg doesn't knock people out cold either. But I didn't know if you know this, Raj, but before tonight, Ronda Rousey had the only 2 straight knockouts in that division in the UFC.
Really?
All the rest were TKOs before this.
That's counting Strikeforce?
No, not including Strikeforce. Okay. But since the move to UFC, all of them have been TKOs except for Rousey's KO against Alexis Davis and the KO against Betch Correa, which is pretty crazy considering she comes from a judo background.
I will say this: the lines for Rousey and Cyborg will be a lot closer if that fight were to happen now than than a week ago. So yeah, man, it's an exciting thing. Sometimes things like this need to happen to shake things up, and it shook things up. I mean, Holm is not an unbeatable champion by any means. I mean, you put her against Miesha Tate, all of a sudden it's not a given conclusion like it would have been with Ronda Rousey and Miesha Tate. And and then when you get back, if it gets back to Holm and Rousey, I don't think they should do an immediate rematch. I think it was one-sided enough that Rousey needs a win before, and I think Amanda Nunes would be a good fight. And I think it's an exciting. It really shakes things up, and I think a lot of interest would be built if Holm manages to retain the title, and Rousey gets back to the number 1 spot, and that fight happens again, like say around UFC 200. Yeah, that'd be gigantic. You don't need Cyborg.
Yeah. I guess Cyborg can crush cans at 145 for $100,000, but man, that's a big one off the table for her for right now anyway. Also, it's worth saying, I remember a guy, and he told me I had to mention it if she won. Jimothy on our board said that Holly Holm would win via knockout like a month ago, and I was like, man, I don't know about that, but she did. It was just unbelievable. What does this do for Ronda Rousey's the WrestleMania and the movies and the media? How does that affect her?
I don't think it does anything. Once these athletes have reached that threshold, that really wins and losses don't matter. It's not like people are looking at Mike Tyson's win-loss record now when he's being up for these movie roles and everything. She's crossed over. It's she's beyond that. So I don't think it does anything. If anything, I think it makes things more interesting. Now this is more of a news story, Now it's like, and because it's not like when Mike Tyson lost and he was just a wreck. Because when he lost to Buster Douglas, that was more his life spiraling out of control, whereas this is more like just over arrogance or whatever, but it's not something that's not fixable.
Yeah.
So I think it just creates more interest, and I think like I said, I think it might be a good thing overall. I think it'll create way more interest, because I do think overall that Ronda Rousey's more dominant than Holly Holm, and it was just the wrong mindset that she was in, and maybe a change in camp would help. But at the same time, sometimes when you think you're unbeatable, that's just hard to overcome until you get beat.
Yeah, 56,000 in that stadium, unbelievable. And yeah, the UFC's having.
What did they say? 56,000.
56,214.
I will say this. This is a problem I had with the last UFC event when they did that at Rogers in Toronto, is they don't do a good enough job of making it look massive. You know what I mean? Like WrestleMania looks so different than a Monday Night Raw, because the way they do the lighting and everything and the camera angles. This doesn't look that much different than other UFC pay-per-views. And, it looks bigger, but it doesn't look like 3 times bigger. And I think the production crew, I don't know if that's by design or whatever, but man, you got near 60,000 people, make it look gigantic. And with the way they do their production, it doesn't look that much bigger.
Yeah. And this was the largest attendance ever for the UFC. It beat out UFC 129. It's just, man, I don't know. I didn't expect to be talking about this tonight. I mean, it was just insane.
Yeah, I mean, I had a bunch of notes for the other fights, but it's like, is it even worth? I mean, we could run through it, but.
Oh, of course. We'll talk about the main fights. Of course, Joanna Jędrzejczyk defeated Valerie Letourneau. Valerie Letourneau put up a much better fight than I thought she would.
Joanna Jędrzejczyk, where does the N come from?
I have no idea.
In her last name. I don't get it.
Probably the C and the Z.
That makes an N in Polish, I guess?
I don't know. I'm sure we have some people of Polish heritage among our listeners. Maybe somebody can help us out with that.
Yeah, because I keep wanting to say Jędrzejczyk, but it's pronounced Jędrzejczyk, and I just don't get what the N comes from. So yeah, any of our Polish listeners, please let us know. But yeah,
Scott Putsky's going to hit us up.
Scott, let us know. But yeah, that again, another that should not have been 20-1. When I saw 20-1 for that fight, I was just like, this is ridiculous. Because anything can happen. Chael Sonnen, in a way, almost beat John Jones. If that toe was discovered between rounds,
Yes.
Chael Sonnen would have won the title. So. There should never be anything more than like 8-1, I think, in MMA.
We saw over the course of a year, we saw Jose Aldo almost get beat. We saw John Jones almost get beat. We saw GSP almost get beat. We saw so many people that were considered unbeatable, either beaten or almost beaten. So anything is possible in MMA. And I always hate the notion of a lucky punch, too. If you throw it at somebody's face and it connects, it was a good punch.
Right, yeah, but, exactly.
I mean, you don't throw a punch with, not the intention of hurting somebody. But Valerie Letourneau, she used to be a 135er, and up until this fight, virtually anybody with any bit of experience, she would get beaten by. I mean, she lost to Roxanne Modafferi a couple years ago to get into the house of Ultimate Fighter. And Roxanne Modafferi, no offense to her, but she is not good at MMA. She implemented what I thought was a pretty decent game plan early, using her strength to kind of back Joanna up against the cage, and was not afraid to strike with Joanna. Unfortunately, that didn't bode well for her because she got outstruck 3-1.
Yeah, I will say this, it was a good fight. Joanna, she just seems to get fresher as the fight goes on. I thought the first round, I actually gave it to Valerie, and then the next four Joanna. But she just got sharper and sharper. And man, Valerie's leg just looked brutal. She is going to be in some serious pain tomorrow.
Yeah, I thought that first round was really, really close. I think I gave it to Joanna, but it was virtually a coin flip to me. I was hoping that this, for the UFC and Joanna, this would be a star-making performance. I don't think it necessarily was, but obviously it didn't hurt her at all, especially when she's watched by 56,000 people and maybe millions more.
Yeah, I don't know. I look at Joanna like Demetrius Johnson. She just doesn't have that charisma. You know what I mean? She could be a great fighter, but she just doesn't have that draw that will get people in, and that's not going to change. She's a great fighter. She's exciting in the when she's in action, but she's just not. She just doesn't have that main event charisma. So I understand what the UFC was doing, and I think it's the right thing to do, and you should because sometimes you never know, because Anderson Silva didn't have that either. And then he just built that, insane record to where his record was the draw, and that made him a draw. But
I think she has a unique charm, though, that Demetrius Mighty Mouse Johnson doesn't have. But yeah,
I don't know.
Also, the big heavyweight fight, the big heavyweight rematch. Kind of what everybody in the know saw coming. Mark Hunt knocked out Bigfoot Silva. Bigfoot Silva off of TRT, maybe not such a good thing. If there's one person in the UFC that has a legitimate excuse to use it, it's a guy that suffered from acromegaly and things like that. And hard to believe that Bigfoot's ever going to be the same. Mark Hunt, though, good God, this guy. He at one point, I think Mark Hunt lost 5 of 6 fights to a variation of a wrist lock, Kimura, either top wrist lock, double wrist lock, whatever it may be. And he's put together this run in the UFC where he started out as a novelty because he was just who he was.
Well, plus it was his contract carried over.
Yeah,
like they didn't want to sign him.
And he refused to accept the buyout. And he said, "No, I want to fight." And he's parlayed that into a 5-year run. Now, granted, he's only won 2 of his last 6 fights, but he's still doing what he's doing as he's advertised to do. He's having great fights.
2 of his last 6, but 6 of his last 6. I mean, 6 of his last 12. So
yeah,
he's had in the UFC, he's been doing pretty well. Because considering that those fights have been against Fabricio Verdum, his losses,
Stipe
Miocic, who is probably next in line for a title shot. Well, maybe not next. Assuming Junior Dos Santos isn't in there next, but he's up there in the mix. So his losses have been to the cream of the crop in that division, and this is a guy who was basically a jobber. At the end of Pride, he was kind of he had lost 6 in a row before he went into or 5 in a row before he went to the UFC. And man, he's just one of those guys you just can't root against. He's just the most natural baby face. He's just and I have never seen him look so lean ever. I mean, from Pride on, he looked in better shape tonight than I've ever seen him. And he's 42, 43?
I don't think he's that old. I think he might be 40 or 41. Or no, he's 41, yeah.
Oh, geez. I just turned 40, so I guess I always assume people are older. But anyway, so he's younger than I thought.
I'd like to see him face Josh Barnett next.
That
seems. Which getting Josh Barnett to fight is easier said than done because he's got a lot of other stuff going on, things like that. Also worth noting, I thought that Uriah Hall was Uriah Hall tonight. He lost to Robert Whittaker, but Uriah Hall shows flashes of brilliance, and then he becomes the most frustrating fighter ever.
Brutal.
Although he almost landed an unintentional Fameasser tonight, though.
Yeah, that was if that would have hit, that would have been the highlight of before the main event.
Maybe Billy Gunn would have got his job back. I doubt it. But
no, someone would have just stolen the move. But
that's true.
Yeah, man, he is. He needs to. I feel like he needs to harden up. It's like he needs to go to prison or something. You know what I mean? Like something to harden you up. And I don't know what. But he just lacks that. I mean, it's the same things that people have said forever, but he just lacks that killer instinct to be consistent, fight in, fight out. In a way, it makes it interesting because you're wondering who shows up. But at the same time, when he wins, it's spectacular. When he loses, it's usually it's usually a decision, and this was one of those, and it wasn't a bad fight, but. No. With Hall, like you're not always seeing everything he can do, and it's unfortunate because you have a limited shelf life in this sport, and when you're not giving it your all and going for the kill constantly, and when you've got your win-loss record where he does. Pardon my French, but you're fucked unless you you go for it.
Yeah,
and we should put the explicit tag when post this podcast up. But seriously,
he had won 5 of his last 6 fights coming into this, but I mean, Robert Whittaker, let's not take anything away from him. He's won 4 in a row now, I think.
No, he's
good. I think
that's the thing. When he lost to Kevin Gastelum, people were, we're shitting on him. But Kevin Gastelum has proven that he's a legit threat.
Yes.
He's not a flash in the pan. He's a guy that if he can make weight, he's a legit threat.
And that was a split decision. And before this,
right,
all 3 of his UFC losses were split decisions, Uriah Hall. So on somebody's scorecard, he could have won. He could have been.
He could be almost undefeated.
He could be 8-0 in the UFC prior to this fight. He won on nobody's scorecard tonight, and it's so frustrating. And you could tell. I mean, there were those flashes when he did like those like he was going for a tornado kick, like Michael Page style. It was you saw it coming, and then he just kind of let up, and he clinched with 2 minutes left. He tried to do a cage clinch. Obviously down 2 rounds to none, and he tried to work off of the cage, tried to take him down. I don't know what he thought he was going to accomplish there, but
his wrestling defense sucks.
Yeah,
and he hasn't really improved at that at all. And if you want to be an exciting fighter, at the bottom side of the top 10 or the upper side of the top 10 to 20, that's fine. But he's not gonna make it towards the upper echelon unless he works on that, and I don't see it happening. I think it's gone a little too far. But he's an exciting fighter with the right opponent, and and it's funny, my wife. She stopped watching UFCs a while ago once they started having so many shows, but she'll watch them every now and then. And she watched it tonight, and at the opening credits, the opener when they have the opening video, and she was really excited about the 2 women, having the 2 women's fights co-headlining, and and they flash like the nicknames, and I never knew Whittaker's nickname. And so they flash it, and I was like pouring. And so if I sound a little slurry, we had a little wine tonight. But when it flashed, she's like, "What the fuck?" And I'm like, "Oh, what's going on?" She goes, "That guy's nickname is the Raper." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, "There's no way that guy's nickname is the Raper." And so I'm like looking at my phone because I didn't want to rewind because I hate like rewinding while watching live UFC.
Yeah.
And it turned out it was a Reaper, and she missed the E. But I was like, anyway, a random story.
I can't make this up. There's an RV and van salesman in our state, and his last name is Raper.
R-A-P-E-R?
R-A-P-E-R. The last name you want to have if you're selling vans. I mean, come on.
Wow.
And also, we have to mention the very.
Anyways, that guy is a beast, and I think he's like Kevin Gastelum. I think he's a very underrated guy that is starting to make waves, and he seemed to me like he could be a title contender.
Yeah, he's going to crack the top 10 now, and.
How was he ever a welterweight? I never got. I mean, that dude is as a middleweight. He was a really thick dude. I don't know how he's ever a welterweight. But anyway, sorry, keep going.
Also, we had one of the most boring fights of the year. Jared Rosholt defeated Stefan Struve. Stefan Struve he's the gatekeeper at heavyweight. He can't stop a takedown. I'm tired of hearing how good he is off his back because he's not good off his back. He's not good on the ground. If you've watched the Mark Hunt fight, you know that. Rosholt was able to get his hips underneath a 7-foot guy, not a big surprise, and defeat him. I didn't really care to talk about this fight, but I always mentioned, I wanted to bring this up, that if Brock Lesnar ever fought in the UFC again, I would have had him fight Stefan Struve. And then the UFC could have spun it as him defeating a 7-foot monster. That's literally the only fight I would have given Brock Lesnar outside of Frank Mir, just so the WWE could spin it and capitalize off of it. But
yeah, the problem is Stefan Struve doesn't look like a monster.
No,
And the problem is management. It's like, grow your beard, grow your hair out, do some, you look like a child that's 7 foot tall, like try to look a little imposing. And he looks like a little kid that's just very tall. And, Rochal looked like he was 5'5" in there.
Yeah, he did.
And why would you use the nickname The Big Show? Isn't that, I mean, The Big Show has had a very successful career, but that name is a little tainted. And when you're using that name coming out, you don't sound fresh. You know what I mean? Like, you sound outdated. And The Big Show, I think it just has that, that taint to it. You just don't sound like a dominating guy.
Well, let's be honest. He lived up to the moniker tonight.
Yeah.
He did.
Yeah.
I'm watching. I have the FS1 post-fight thing on in the background, and Dana White looks dejected. Ronda Rousey is at the hospital, so she probably will not be at the post-fight press conference. Doubt she would have been anyway, to be honest with you, because she left the cage immediately. I mean, yeah, and this isn't it. They've got a card that's on paper the biggest of all time next month, with Conor McGregor against Jose Aldo, Chris Weidman against Luke Rockhold, and Jacare Souza against Yoel Romero.
Well, what's that statement? Seeing the forest through the trees or whatever it is.
Yeah.
Dana, I mean, what did he have next for Ronda?
Nothing.
Unless he had Cyborg ready to fight at 135, like very soon. Tate 3 is not, I mean, it would have done well, but it's not. I think this is probably the best thing that could happen to him.
Yeah, I don't think that being undefeated or not being undefeated anymore is a death knell or anything for Ronda Rousey. It wasn't for Mike Tyson. He did great business after losing to Buster Douglas.
He could come out and fight now. I will say this with the Rochal. I did have to mention this. I love Phil Collins, but coming out to, in the air tonight, come on, like you need to have like a real, that first fight on the main card, their entrance music sucked. Like you don't get into that. Like, I will say this, like Uriah Hall and Whitaker, they both had good entrance music. And then before that, it's, I don't know. That's always bugged me. When you come out to shit like that, come out to something that'll get people pumped. And, something you could work out to. Why would you come out to something that's just, why would you come out to like Billie Jean? Come out to something that'll get you hyped up.
I agree. You need a signature sound. I mean, everybody knows who's coming out when Forrest Griffin's music hit, or even Michael Bisping's music hit. They know who's walking out. And Anderson Silva, he even tried to change his music, and the UFC was like, "You're not changing your music. We're keeping DMX." Yeah. So, it's just, I agree.
And who was it that came out to that Kanye West Power?
Oh gosh,
I think it was Uriah Hall.
Yeah,
every time I heard that, I would always think like, this is a great MMA, entrance song.
Uriah Faber to California Love. That's another signature one.
Absolutely.
But this is a lot to take in this night. I mean, it seemed. Here's the thing. It seemed like just another Saturday night in November until that main event. It really did.
I did not want to commit to a podcast because it was so. It just seems so.
To your credit, you agreed to do it before that fight, though.
I did.
Yeah,
I did. Yes, and I committed myself. I did have. I'm a little guilty. I did have more wine because I didn't think, I thought it was going to end up being a short night. So me and my wife kind of polished through a bottle and a half.
I noticed you're unusually loose tonight. It's the boss man is pretty loose tonight.
A little loose. I did want to say something, at some point. I did want to say something about the whole Paris thing before we finish up. Or should I say it now?
Go ahead. Yeah, say it now because we're about to finish up.
I do want to say, at the site, we have our, it's a very hard thing to say, but, our thoughts and our condolences are with anyone out there and just with everyone. Because I know how frightening it is, regardless of, obviously how terrible it is if you're out there, but it affects everyone. And I feel like that's it's just one of these things that I don't know. Anyway,
I know what you mean, man. And let me tell you, I live in Kentucky, and it's not the most sensible place all the time. I want to let people know there's no like uniform race, religion, or gender for terrorism, and I don't think hate is a good way to make something like this better. So don't contribute to hate. Make things better. Keep the people that are hurt or killed in your thoughts. I think that's the best way to go about it. I mean, obviously people grieve in different ways, but it's terrible. It's horrible.
It's frightening, and it goes, to here, domestically when we see all these school shootings and mass shootings, and we got to move away from this topic because they're just going to spread out. But it's just the violence and raising kids. Myself, I don't. When I hear these stories, it would get me mad. But now with kids, it gets me worried and sad. And it's something. I don't know what's going on. I don't know where the world is going, but my thoughts are with it. All anyone that was affected, and I think in a way we're all affected. So, but let's move on. Let's go back.
Yeah, a big night and crazy.
Let's talk a bit about where the world title tournament is now after SmackDown.
Yeah, I gotta say, man, to take a line out of Vince Russo's book, I gotta say, SmackDown was good this week, and the title matches. I rarely read spoilers of SmackDown because I cover the show, and when you cover as much wrestling as we do in a week, you want to be a little surprised and make it as easy to digest as possible. The 3 tournament matches were very good on SmackDown. The upset with Kalisto beating Ryback was awesome. That was great, and Ryback needs to be a heel really badly because it's the only way he can get over. The clash of styles between he and Kalisto, excellent. The match between Kalisto and Alberto Del Rio, I think that's going to kick all kinds of ass. I would love to see Kalisto win that like by count out or something. But the only thing there is he's going to have to face Reigns if it happens, and there's no way that's going to happen.
And regardless of what people say, Alberto Del Rio's got a sweet contract. Whether you want to believe WWE side or not, you don't want to lose his value. And losing to Kalisto, I mean, I think Ryback losing to Kalisto has dropped him down a couple pegs. It's gonna take a while for him to be, at a level where he's near the upper level. You know what I mean?
I could see something like this making him snap and turning back into like maybe the heel bully.
The problem is, and I gotta say this, when we brought Vince Russo on with the Raw review, and I know you had a lot of you and Vince have a lot of disagreements and stuff.
I had my reservation, sure.
Right, and we get a lot of shit for it, but the stuff he says is a lot of times it's dead on. Like
I've been very pleasantly surprised, and I've made sure to tell people that because I mean, let me make this clear. I had criticized Vince Russo to the point to where he blocked me on Twitter. I had to ask him on air after we had been doing this for a month to unblock me on Twitter, and he did. And when I listen to what he says, I'm like, you know what, you're right. He doesn't try to tell people how to wrestle matches because that's not what he does. He says the right things and they make sense.
Right. I think we'll all agree the stuff he did in WCW is crap. I think though his ideas are dead on in a lot of ways, in the sense that the whole world title tournament shouldn't have been a tweet that Jonathan Coachman gave away. It should have been a huge story. And it should have been like, you got to tune into Raw, and it's an evolving story throughout the show that bleeds into the other shows, and that, you know, it goes on through to the pay-per-view. Instead, it's leaked. You know, it's leaked in a tweet that they're going to have a tournament, and then you just have these matches, and it just turns into a regular show with just these matches where you know pretty much every result. That was like the one result that you did not know, was Kalisto and Ryback, that you assumed that Ryback was going to win. He didn't, but you know Kalisto's not going to win the tournament. So ultimately, I don't know. For something that could have been a huge thing, it's they've dropped the ball. But it's clear to me now that Roman Reigns has to win.
Yeah, they have to establish a main event heel.
You can't have a mid-carder at this point. You can't, and this is no disrespect to Kevin Owens, and it's not like he is responsible for being a mid-carder, but the way they have positioned him, if they had booked him as strongly as they had when he first came in and after he beat Cena and maintained that momentum, then absolutely he should be winning the tournament, but they didn't. And if you have someone like a Sheamus or Kevin Owens win the tournament in this time when they lack so many top stars, then it's just gonna hurt them way more than putting it on basically Roman Reigns. I mean, Ambrose, I actually think you should put it on Ambrose, but
to me there are two ways to go. They have to establish a main event heel because there are none. There is a main eventer in Roman Reigns and a guy who's been protected in Dean Ambrose. I wouldn't call him a main eventer right now, although I wish he was, but he's been protected. That's it. That's it. I mean, because Del Rio was brought in and he looked like he could be main event stuff. Then he's put in a little program with Jack Swagger and it immediately decreased his value. Kevin Owens lost his feud, then feuded with Ryback, decreased his value. One of those guys has to go heel, and it's hard for me to believe that a heel Dean Ambrose would get booed over Roman Reigns. I don't think it would. And you would have to align Ambrose with the authority to even turn him heel.
Who would you say are the top 5 stars, and including Undertaker right now?
Including Undertaker? So
yeah.
It got to be Undertaker, Roman Reigns, Dean Ambrose, Bray Wyatt, and man, that number 5, good God.
See, you're forgetting 2 big names.
Who?
Lesnar and Cena.
Well, Lesnar and Cena, but Cena's out.
Well, I mean, like active roster.
Well, yeah, obviously. Cena, Lesnar, Undertaker, Reigns, and Ambrose, I would say.
All right, so 3 of the top 5 aren't even in the tournament, and there's no explanation why they're not in the tournament.
Yeah. It has not been explained where John Cena is.
You could have easily done an injury angle with him, with Del Rio, like done an armbar, anything, and just
put him over.
Explanation. Yeah, no explanation at all. And so instead you have a world title tournament with Kalisto and Titus O'Neil, and you don't have Lesnar or Undertaker or any of these guys. I mean, that's kind of Bray Wyatt, Braun Strowman, any of these guys that you've been building up.
If I'm WWE, I'm trying to work out dates with Lesnar. I'm trying to work out dates with Jericho even. Anybody that I can get to lend any sort of name value and help out. They were in a rough situation. They obviously couldn't bring like a Jericho into England to be in this tournament, but Titus O'Neil was in this tournament and the New Day weren't. The New Day are some of the most over acts on TV. It's a lot of baffling stuff.
It should have, it's like like you said, like they should have had a battle royal. They should have, it should have been all this stuff of people jockeying to try to get in this tournament that normally wouldn't have been, and the ones that are in, it should have been a huge story. It should have been a gigantic thing, and it's just a bunch of matches that don't make sense, and who's going to make it to the finals. But anyway.
I liked Mike Killam's idea of Triple H trying to put himself in the tournament because he was the only one who could get it done because none of the other champions could, because they've had to I mean, Cena's gone, Lesnar's gone, Sting's gone, Rollins is hurt. Orton couldn't get it done. Daniel Bryan's hurt. They're hurting right now, and their numbers are terrible, really bad. If I understand it probably won't ever go back to 2 hours because of money, but man, just to make it a digestible show, I would take it to 2 hours, and I would start it at 8 and just say forget 11 p.m. because that hour is just death for them. I would make SmackDown more important. That way you don't go back. Because I remember before it was 3 hours, the matches were 4 or 5 minutes, and nobody was getting over because of that.
Man, it's
weird.
The formula has been lost. They haven't, because you don't need to have an angle every segment. And that's where I differ with Vince Russo. Yes, you should have storylines with everyone, but you don't need to have angles happening constantly or nothing sticks. But you need to have other stuff going on. You need to have people being built, and you need to have other people cutting promos and people being exposed to other talent for them to break through. And it's not happening. And this 3 hours is going to be a killer. And it's been happening, and I don't see it changing.
When
no one is left wanting more at the end of Raw.
When CM Punk was around, when the Shield were an act, when the Usos were over and they had that cool feud with the Shield and Cody Rhodes and Goldust, the 3 hours didn't go by so slowly. They've just lost out on so much. Their roster is just depleted. It's in rough shape.
Who leaves Raw being like, oh, I can't wait to follow up on SmackDown?
Yeah. And we have a lot of people that do the thumbs up thing, but I think a lot of that is often on last impressions.
It's like, Undertaker is back, so the last 3 hours didn't matter. Thumbs up.
Yeah.
But did that really change your buying habits? Did that change your interest? But I don't know.
It's getting hard to watch Raw every Monday. And you know what's weird to me? I watch a show like Lucha Underground that has a guy that WWE let go, like Chris DeJoseph. And for better or for worse, almost everything on the show is interesting. And I'm like, man, very rarely is anything that WWE does on their flagship show interesting. It's a really disheartening time because, I mean, by other show standards, Raw's doing pretty decent ratings, but not by Raw standards.
No, I mean, they're at a near 20-year, 17-year low. Yeah. And you can't, because Raw follows a sports pattern, right? Like it's you want to compare it more to like a sports because it's I don't know what the right term is, but it's anyway.
It's like it's live event programming basically.
Right, it's supposed to be commercial proof in the sense that you should want to watch it live. It should be like not something that you DVR and watch later, like what a Modern Family. You don't need to watch it live, and it's become more and more like you can watch it later. Yeah. Whereas back in the day, you needed to watch it live. The surprises, the unpredictability, you
can watch the 3-minute YouTube clips and you won't miss a thing.
And I love great matches as much as everyone else, but it should be the conclusion to something. It should be a great feud leading to a great match, and you get hooked in. But having a bunch of great matches every week, at some point, it's like, all right, it's like you watching two great actors, or you're watching a bunch of great actors just doing skits. And they're just like doing these parts in a play that aren't part of a greater play. And it's like, well, what's the point at some point? It's like,
it's like they're too afraid to push the envelope. And I'm not talking about Attitude Era, wiener jokes all the time. I mean, plenty of shows on cable TV in prime time push the envelope. And their audience, I get it. They have advertisers to answer to. They can still make a compelling show. I mean,
right. Yeah, I mean, look at WWF in the 80s. Hulk Hogan, Andre the Giant. They weren't pushing the envelope, but it was these two greater, larger-than-life personalities, and he had the story built in, and it got everyone tuning in. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
So,
I definitely do. It's something like that has to. I mean, if I were booking wrestling, and I'm not, but I would want as many people over as possible, and it seems really counterproductive to the way that they do things.
oh, God.
I get it.
Yeah.
I remember I went to Raw in Cincinnati in May, and by far the most over people outside of Dean Ambrose, because he's the hometown guy, were New Day. People were chanting New Day sucks before the show, during the show, after the show. They came there, they wanted to watch the New Day get their ass kicked, and all of a sudden, I remember after that, the New Day lost like 14 matches in a row. It was weird, man.
Even in Raw in Denver, it was New Day and Cesaro were probably the most, and Dean Ambrose. And,
Worth noting, Cesaro gets some of the most views on their YouTube videos that they have.
Yeah, I mean, Vince has something that, you know, it's like if you talk to Court Bauer and about Rey Mysterio and their booking plans with him and how Vince made it a priority to prove all the writers wrong for wanting Rey to win the title, and that's when he got squashed nonstop after winning the title. And it's like the self-fulfilling prophecy where, yes, if someone's over and then you beat them nonstop, yes, they won't be over anymore. But if someone's over, and that's such a rare thing, run with it. Do what you can, and not run with it like in a nerdy parent way like you did with Fandango and the Fandangoing. Yeah. But, you know, and that's why, you know, it was Sasha Banks, and I think she's positioned perfectly because, and not that I think that they're going to handle it right, but she's getting over.
Yeah.
And Charlotte, they pushed her too quick, and she's getting booed.
But but Sasha's bubbling, like she's bubbling under the surface, and she'll explode once she gets there.
If they do it right.
Yeah, if they do it right.
And that's the big thing. But, you know, that she got the better end of that deal because Charlotte's looking like a flop.
Yeah.
And Sasha is looking like this big underground cult hero, and you keep her out of that mix, let that keep building. And it reminds me of AJ Lee, where it was building up. Of course, they kind of screwed that up by making her GM and doing all the silly stuff, but you let Sasha build up and then build to that, you know, world title match at WrestleMania, and bam, maybe you could have a Real Divas Revolution, but we'll see.
I hope it happens. Something has to be done, and surely they know about it. I wonder. I would pay $30 a month for WWE Network if they let us watch a creative meeting once a month.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah, I mean,
scary.
20. Yeah, it'd be terrifying. 26 writers, and I see better ideas on our comment boards.
Absolutely.
It's unbelievable, but we're going to wrap things up. We will be back Monday night following Raw. Hopefully a good one. Good God, I hope it's a good one.
What a crazy night. Ronda Rousey knocked out.
Knocked out cold.
Insane.
Guys, leave us some feedback in the comment section. If you all like the MMA podcast, maybe we'll do more. Big UFC coming up next month, so definitely stay tuned for that coverage.